The room held 14 people when Richard said it. Eleanor counted them afterward, the way she counted everything automatically, without meaning to. 14 witnesses, 3 connected to the Lloyd's underwriting committee, 2 of whom would repeat what they heard before the week was out. My stepsister is not well, Richard said, gesturing toward the estate accounts on Lord Whitmore's dining table. She becomes involved in matters beyond her capacity. The anxiety produces errors. The errors produce more anxiety. He smiled. We are addressing it. He did not look at Eleanor. Neither did most of the room. She was standing 6 feet from the table, holding a cup of tea she had poured herself, looking at the figure in the third column that was wrong by exactly 214. Not approximately £200, exactly 214. Found it in less than 40 seconds. The brass compass in her pocket was her mother's. She could feel the weight of it through the wool. She set down the tea. The laws in this story are real. The Lunacy Commission existed. The petition process existed. The silences it enforced in women's lives existed. The people navigating those laws are invented. But what happens to them lives in the space between what we know and what we understand must have been true. In 1842, a petition required 2 medical signatures and 1 from a family member. If the commission found a person of unsound mind, contracts voided, testimony dismissed, every document they had produced, letters, ledgers, estate records, reclassified as inadmissible, not destroyed, made invisible by a single word. Richard Ashford had the form in the second drawer of his writing desk, folded once along the center crease. The first physician's signature was in place. The second had been arranged for Thursday. He did not think of it as cruelty. He thought of it as a solution to a problem Eleanor, in her persistent habit of marking discrepancies in red ink, had created for herself. This detail, the form, the crease, the Thursday appointment, would become important very soon. Eleanor's mother died on a Tuesday in March. Eleanor was 15 and had tracked the 6 weeks of illness on a small calendar in her Latin primer, not out of morbidity, but because marking time gave her something to hold. In the last coherent hours, her mother gave her 2 things. The first, a brass compass, small enough to sit in a closed palm, engraved MA on the back. Orient yourself before you calculate, her mother said. Eleanor had not fully understood. She understood it now. The second was a question. The Whitmore annuity, do you know what it pays? No. Find out. Do the arithmetic yourself. Don't take anyone's word. Her mother died before explaining why. Eleanor found out 3 months later. The annuity paid £147 per annum against a policy priced for a 19-year payout interval. She worked it out on a letter she then burned. The estate would overpay by £31 in the first decade alone. Not approximately 30, exactly 31. She said nothing. She was not sure anyone would listen. Her father died 2 years later. Richard arrived with a solicitor before the body was cold. She's not suited to numbers, he told the man, in the parlour within Eleanor's hearing. She was 17, holding the compass. He said it with the confidence of repetition, as though a thing stated enough times becomes simply true. The solicitor nodded. The account books moved to Richard's study. Eleanor kept her own in a marbled journal behind a loose board in the wainscoting. By 23, she had identified £847 in discrepancies across the 17 policies, not approximately 800, exactly 847. She wrote them in columns. She did not yet know what they meant, but someone else did. Richard Ashford was not a dramatic man. Pleasant at dinners, competent at shooting, capable of the correct expression at the correct moment. He moved through rooms without friction. The money came out gradually. 3 policies, manipulated across 4 years. 1839, 1840, twice in 1841. Twice in 1841, was 11 years and 8 months of that comfort, spent in 3 on a railway speculation the market had called worthless. He needed Eleanor's records to not exist. That was the entire unadorned problem. Mrs. Agnes Tate had understood this first, 14 years as Mr. Holt's assistant, and she had checked Eleanor's figures quietly in the margins of her own notebooks more times than she could count. Eleanor's arithmetic was not anxious. It was precise in the way that only comes from doing a thing alone, without instruction or applause for a very long time. Mrs. Tate had said nothing. Mr. Holt's contract was in Richard's hands. Not cowardice, she had told herself. Arithmetic of a different kind. She was no longer entirely sure she believed that. Richard was waiting for one final signature. He did not know Eleanor had already found the 3rd policy. Lord James Calderton had an income of £38,000 per year. A baron of middling estate earned perhaps £3,000. When a man of that income walked into a room, the room reorganized itself. James was aware of this. He did not enjoy it as much as he was supposed to. He had been working with the Lloyd's Reform Committee for 18 months, developing a standard for detecting manipulated mortality tables, on paper professional, in reality personal. In 1839, his fiancée's family lost £4,200 to a fraudulent annuity, a policy sold against an adjusted mortality table. The loss was not recoverable, neither was the engagement. She had made a rational decision. He understood rational decisions. That did not mean he had forgiven the system that made hers necessary. He first saw Eleanor on the 14th of October in the corridor outside Lord Whitmore's study. She was carrying a leather folio, moving with the unhurried gait of someone who has learned that urgency gives other people permission to stop her. Ink on the right index finger, at the base of the nail, the kind that comes from working, not copying. He did not forget the ink. 3 days later, at the Lloyds Committee session in Bishopsgate, Eleanor was not supposed to be there. She had come with Mr. Holt. He was midway through the second column when she said quietly, "The 1841 Ashford policy interval is anomalous. The mean for that risk class is 22 months. This policy settled in 2.6 standard deviations from expectation." The room stopped. After the session, James found her in the corridor replacing papers in the folio. "Which table did you use for the standard?" "Halley's, adjusted for the 1838 revision." "Who taught you that?" "No one. I taught myself. I am told you cannot be trusted with accounts." "You were told incorrectly." He held out his hand for the folio. "I know. Show me." No one had said that to her in 11 years, not as a conclusion already reached. She showed him. What he saw in the next 40 minutes changed the shape of the following 3 weeks entirely. The petition was filed on the 22nd of October. Eleanor learned of it 4 days late. The clerk had waited before telling Holt. 26 days remaining, not 30. The petition cited her persistent interference in estate accounts as evidence of disordered cognition. It included a letter from a Dr. Fensham describing a consultation Eleanor had never attended. 3 people could confirm where she actually was that day. None had been asked. If the commission found her of unsound mind, 11 years of ledgers, 17 policies, £847 in documented discrepancies would be reclassified, not destroyed. The records of a woman of unsound mind were not evidence, they were symptoms, and £2,340 in fraudulent adjustments would have no witness left who could legally speak to it. Eleanor did not panic. She had been building counter-documentation for 6 weeks, at night, by 2 candles. She needed it organized before the 22nd of November. She had not decided whether to tell James. She had not decided whether she could afford not to. James brought the committee's working files to Holt's office on the 25th of October. Eleanor was at the secondary desk. She did not look up. "The Manchester Regional Table. The committee believes it is correct. I cannot find the error." 3 weeks looking. 4 minutes of silence. She drew a line in the margin of page 7. The 1831's 1838 cohort includes cholera mortality. Cholera years are non-representative. Extract that cohort and recalculate. The projected mean interval shifts by 4.1 months. Every policy priced against this table has been underpriced, compounding at approximately 7% annually. Mrs. Tate, entering with correspondence, stopped at the doorway. She looked at Eleanor, not the file, not James. Something in her expression shifted, like a window opening in a room closed for years. She set the correspondence down without speaking. November the 3rd, 7 in the evening. The mean settlement interval for this class is 23 months. Standard deviation 4.3. Eleanor placed her finger on the first document. This settled in 9, this in 11, this in 7. 7 months sits 3.7 standard deviations from the mean. The probability by chance is less than 1 in 10,000. She looked at James. Mr. Holt held the policy schedule until 1839. Richard assumed control in 1839. The first anomalous settlement is dated March 1839. £2,340, James said. "Exactly. This policy alone accounts for £983. The compass sat on the table beside her left hand. She had not placed it there deliberately. James gave Eleanor the draft reform standard on the 7th. 2 actuaries had already approved it. She returned it that afternoon. 4 pencil notations. The third, clause 7, states annual compounding, but the underlying table assumes semi-annual. Error, £1 in 318.18, over 10 years. Applied across this standard's volume, cumulative discrepancy reaches approximately £14,000 within 5 years. 2 actuaries. No comment. He found her in the anteroom. "How did you find that?" "I read carefully. Miss Ashford, the petition. You know. Tell me the rest. Stay with me. This is the part that changes everything." Late, Holt and Mrs. Tate gone. Fire still going. Eleanor told him about the wainscoting. The marbled journal. 11 years, Monday nights by 2 candles. She told it the way she told figures. He listened the way he read tables. My fiancé's family lost 4,200 Main 1839, he said when she finished. Fraudulent annuity. Same mechanism. Not recoverable, the money or the engagement. She made a rational decision. I understood it. Eleanor said nothing. I was working on the standard when it happened. Not close enough. The compass was on the table. Eleanor looked at it. My mother said orient yourself before you calculate. I think she meant, know where you are standing before you decide what to measure. Where are you standing? James asked. In a room where I have shown you 11 years of work no one asked for. No, he said, but it is a very clear position. The fire settled. The compass sat between them, small and open. If you are still listening, still in Holt's office with the fire and the compass and the 3 anomalous policies on the long table, thank you. You stayed. Now, back to Whitmore House. Richard has received a reply. The Lunacy Commission accepted the petition. Inquiry date, the 22nd of November, 12 days. If the determination went as petitioned, Eleanor's records would be reclassified. 11 years of ledgers, £847 in flagged inconsistencies. 3 policies between 2.6 and 3.7 standard deviations from expectation. Not evidence, symptoms, and symptoms prove nothing about the disease except the disease. James learned the same evening, from a copy addressed to Mr. Holt, not Eleanor. 12 days, he said. The committee session is the 12th, 2 days between session and inquiry. She looked at the petition. The counter-documentation is complete. I need a room in which it can be heard. She had written to the committee secretary the day after she found the 3rd policy, before she had met James, when she still believed she would be doing this entirely alone. 31 people in a room that seated 22. Richard in the 3rd row, invited by the Phoenix Fire representative, who did not yet understand why this was a mistake. Eleanor stood at the front with 43 pages. Every Ashford policy, every interval, every figure cross-referenced against 17 comparable estates, verified in 2 hands, Eleanor's and Mr. Holt's. She had not prepared a speech. She had prepared a table, 22 minutes, no raised voice. The probability of the 7-month interval by chance is less than 1 in 10,000. The calculation is here in full. Silence. Mrs. Agnes Tate stood up. She opened her notebook to a page near the middle. I am Agnes Tate, Mr. Holt's assistant, 14 years. I have checked Miss Ashford's figures since 1836. No errors. She looked at the committee, not at Richard. I did not come forward because Mr. Holt's contract was at Richard's discretion. I was not prepared to lose my position. A pause. I am prepared now. Richard stood. She is not a qualified, Mr. Ashford. James's voice was not loud. You will respond formally this afternoon with the committee's legal officer. That process includes a full accounting of the policy schedule transfers, February through December of 1839. He looked at Richard. Send for your solicitor. Richard sat down. Eleanor set the 43 pages on the table. The records are complete. I have maintained them for 11 years. I will answer any questions the committee has. She sat down. Richard left before the session ended. He did not return. Do not go anywhere. There is still one scene left, and it is the one that matters most. The room emptied slowly. Mr. Holt shook Eleanor's hand with both of his. Mrs. Tate had already gone. She had a kettle to attend to. James came to where Eleanor stood, replacing the 43 pages into the folio. The committee needs a permanent reviewer of mortality tables and policy intervals. The position does not exist. I intend to create it. A pause. Would you be willing to marry me? 3 seconds. On 3 conditions, she said. He waited. The position is mine independently, not contingent on the marriage. Agreed. My account books, including the marble journal, remain in my custody, not catalogued under your name. Agreed. You will not tell anyone you trust my arithmetic. It does not require your endorsement. It requires only that no one obstruct it. He looked at her for a moment. Agreed. All 3. She closed the folio. Yes. She picked up the compass from the table and put it in her coat pocket. He held the door. 1 year later, Calderton House, November. The secondary desk now held Eleanor's materials. 3 ledgers, committee files, a copy of Halley's tables annotated so heavily the original text was difficult to locate. James was at the primary desk. Neither had spoken in 40 minutes. The fire was going. On the mantelpiece sat the brass compass, open, pointing toward the east window. Mrs. Tate knocked at 4:30 with tea. She had been with the household 7 months. Mr. Holt had retired in the spring, and James had made the offer before Eleanor finished suggesting it. At the door she paused. She looked at Eleanor, the 3 ledgers, the ink on the right index finger, then at the compass. She had cried once, in the kitchen the evening after Bishopsgate, with tea that went cold. She had done her crying then. She left the tea and went back to the kitchen. James moved the teapot to the warmer side of the tray. The compass pointed east. The fire went on. This is a story about a woman whose precision was called anxiety, and whose evidence was nearly reclassified as symptoms. In 1842, the Lunacy Commission required only 2 medical signatures and 1 family statement to initiate an inquiry. A determination of unsound mind voided contracts, dismissed testimony, and rendered every document that person had produced legally inadmissible. The mechanism was used, more than once, more than anyone counted, because the people it was used against no longer had the legal standing to count. Eleanor Ashford was fictional, the law was not. Tell me where this landed. Was it the moment she said you were told incorrectly and handed him the folio? Was it Mrs. Tate standing in the 3rd row, opening her notebook saying I am prepared now, after 14 years of deciding she wasn't? Or was it the 7-month interval, 3.7 standard deviations from the mean? On paper just a figure, in practice 11 years of one woman's life waiting to be seen. Drop it below. I read every one. All characters in this story are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to real persons is coincidental. Historical laws and social systems referenced are real. The people navigating them are invented. This is a story about a woman whose precision was called anxiety, and whose evidence was nearly reclassified as symptoms. In 1842, the Lunacy Commission required only 2 medical signatures and 1 family statement to initiate an inquiry. A determination of unsound mind voided contracts, dismissed testimony, and rendered every document that person had produced legally inadmissible. The mechanism was used, more than once, more than anyone counted, because the people it was used against no longer had the legal standing to count. Eleanor Ashford was fictional, the law was not. Tell me where this landed. Was it the moment she said you were told incorrectly and handed him the folio? Was it Mrs. Tate standing in the 3rd row, opening her notebook saying I am prepared now, after 14 years of deciding she wasn't? Or was it the 7-month interval, 3.7 standard deviations from the mean? On paper just a figure, in practice 11 years of one woman's life waiting to be seen. Drop it below. I read every one. All characters in this story are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to real persons is coincidental. Historical laws and social systems referenced are real. The people navigating them are invented.